Mark Sullivan had always believed he could read people like open books. At 38, he was a master of human nature, a former FBI hostage negotiator who talked down armed killers and unraveled the lies of seasoned criminals with nothing but words. His piercing hazel eyes could spot a twitch of deceit, his calm baritone could soothe a ticking bomb. After a decade in the bureau, he traded high-stakes standoffs for a private crisis consulting firm in Seattle where he resolved corporate disputes and saved failing businesses with the same precision. His life, perched in a sleek penthouse overlooking Puget Sound, seemed to embody the American dream. But dreams, Mark was about to learn, could be illusions. The penthouse was a study in modern elegance, floor-to-ceiling windows framing Seattle's glittering skyline, minimalist furniture in shades of slate and ivory, a kitchen island gleaming under recessed lights. Mark shared it with Emily, his wife of 12 years, a marketing executive whose sharp wit and radiant smile had once made him believe in forever. Their marriage wasn't flawless, whose was, but it was solid, or so he thought. They'd weathered his long nights at the bureau, her grueling campaigns, even the heartbreak of 2 miscarriages. Through it all, they'd clung to each other, building a life that sparkled like the city below. Lately, though, something had shifted. Emily had grown distant, her warmth replaced by a cool detachment. She'd started locking her phone, a habit she'd never had before, and her excuses for late nights at the office felt rehearsed. Client dinners, she'd say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You know how it is. Mark, consumed by a high-profile case involving a tech startup's embezzlement scandal, had chalked it up to stress. He was on the road often, flying to San Francisco or Chicago, and he trusted Emily. Trust, after all, was the bedrock of their life together. That trust began to crack on a rainy Tuesday evening in April. Mark had returned early from a trip, his flight landing ahead of schedule. The penthouse was quiet when he stepped inside, the only sound the soft patter of rain against the windows. He dropped his briefcase by the door, expecting to find Emily curled up with a glass of wine, maybe binge-watching one of her true crime shows. Instead, he found her in the kitchen, whispering into her phone. Her back was to him, her voice low and urgent. "He's not here yet," she said, pausing to listen. "No, he won't suspect a thing. Just stick to the plan." Mark froze, his pulse quickening. He stepped back silently, retreating to the shadowed hallway. Emily hadn't noticed him. She laughed softly, a sound that used to warm him but now sent a chill down his spine. "Soon," she said. "It's all coming together." She ended the call, set her phone face down on the counter, and headed upstairs. Mark's mind raced. Years of training had taught him not to jump to conclusions. No evidence, no accusation. But the words he'd overheard weren't casual. They were calculated, laced with intent. Who was she talking to? And what was this plan? He wanted to storm upstairs, demand answers, but that wasn't his way. He needed facts, not emotions. He poured himself a glass of water, feigning normalcy, and called out, "I'm home." Her footsteps paused on the stairs. "Mark? You're early." Her voice was bright, but when she appeared, her smile was tight, her eyes darting. She crossed the room, kissed his cheek, and hugged him, a fraction too long, as if overcompensating. "How was Chicago?" "Same old," he said, studying her. No tells, no lip bite, no fidgeting. She was good. Too good. "You okay? You seem distracted." "Just work," she said, waving a hand. "Big campaign launch. You know how it gets." She grabbed her phone, clutching it like a lifeline, and excused herself to freshen up. Mark watched her go, his gut twisting. Something was wrong. He could feel it, the way he'd felt a suspect's lie before they even opened their mouth. That night, as Emily slept, Mark lay awake, replaying her words. "He won't suspect a thing." The phrase gnawed at him, a splinter in his mind. He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and padded to his home office. The room was his sanctuary, books on psychology, a framed FBI commendation, a photo of him and Emily at their 10th anniversary, her head on his shoulder, both of them laughing. The memory stung. He sat at his desk, opened his laptop, and hesitated. Checking her phone or email would cross a line. But so had she. He didn't touch her phone. Instead, he turned to the penthouse's security system, a state-of-the-art setup he'd installed when they moved in. Cameras covered the entry, living room, and garage, but none were in private spaces like the bedroom. Or so he'd thought. Logging into the system, he ran a routine diagnostic, something he hadn't done in months. A red flag popped up, an unauthorized device linked to the network. A camera hidden in the bedroom embedded in a wall-mounted picture frame. Mark's blood ran cold. He hadn't installed it. Someone else had. Heart-pounding, he accessed the camera's feed, stored on a secure server. The most recent file was timestamped yesterday, 11:47 p.m. He clicked play. The screen flickered to life, showing their bedroom, king bed, navy linens, Emily's scarf draped over a chair. Then she appeared, slipping off her earrings, her movements relaxed. A man entered behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Mark's breath caught. It was Ryan, his best friend since college, his business partner, the guy who'd toasted their wedding and helped launch his firm. Ryan kissed Emily's neck and she laughed, leaning into him. They moved to the bed, their intimacy practiced, familiar. Mark's hands clenched, nails biting into his palms. He forced himself to keep watching. The betrayal was bad enough, but what came next was worse. As they lay tangled in the sheets, Ryan propped himself on an elbow. He still doesn't know? Emily smirked. Mark? He's too busy saving the world. He'll never see it coming. So the plan's on track? Ryan asked, his voice low. Viper's handling it, she said. We frame him for the fraud, tank the company, and walk away clean. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. Mark paused the video, his vision blurring. Fraud. His company. Viper. The words swirled, each one a dagger. This wasn't just an affair. It was a conspiracy, a calculated move to destroy him. His mind, trained to dissect motives, screamed money. His firm was worth millions, and a fraud charge would ruin his reputation, his finances, everything. But who was Viper? And why? He rewound the footage, catching a detail he'd missed. Emily, checking her phone, had glanced at the camera directly at it. She knew it was there. She'd installed it, or someone had for her. The realization hit like a punch. This wasn't just personal. It was a setup, and he was the target. Mark leaned back, his chair creaking in the silent office. Anger surged, hot and raw, but he tamped it down. He'd faced worse: gunmen, bomb threats, corporate sharks. He knew how to stay calm, how to think 3 steps ahead. Emily and Ryan thought they held all the cards. They thought he was clueless, a pawn in their game. They were wrong. He copied the footage to a secure drive, uploaded it to an encrypted cloud server, and set a dead man's switch. If anything happened to him, the files would go to his lawyer and the FBI. Then he sat, staring at the anniversary photo. Emily's smile mocked him. He wanted to shatter the frame, to scream, but that would give them power. Instead, he whispered, "You started this. Now I finish it." Mark Sullivan wasn't just a negotiator. He was a hunter. And in 24 hours, he'd make sure justice found its mark. Mark Sullivan sat in the dim glow of his office, the Seattle skyline a blur of rain-streaked lights beyond the window. The betrayal he'd uncovered hours ago, Emily's affair with Ryan, their plot to frame him for fraud, the mysterious Viper burned like acid in his chest. The bedroom footage still looped in his mind. Emily's smirk, Ryan's casual confidence, her chilling words, "He'll never see it coming." Mark's fingers tightened around the anniversary photo on his desk, their smiling faces a cruel mockery. He wanted to hurl it against the wall, to let rage consume him, but rage was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not now. He had 24 hours to turn the tables, and he'd do it his way, calm, precise, unstoppable. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe. A memory surfaced, unbidden, their 10th anniversary, 2 years ago, on a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Sound. Emily had worn a sapphire dress, her laughter bright as she teased him about his terrible dance moves. They'd swayed to a slow song, her head against his chest, whispering promises of forever. The memory twisted the knife deeper. Had it all been a lie? Had she been planning this even then? Mark shoved the thought aside. Sentiment wouldn't help him now. Evidence would. His training kicked in, the same instincts that had defused hostage crises and exposed corporate lies. No accusations without proof. No moves without a plan. Emily and Ryan thought they were untouchable, but they'd underestimated him. Mark opened his laptop, its screen casting a cold light across his face. First, he secured the bedroom footage, encrypting it on a cloud server with a dead man's switch. If he didn't check in within 48 hours, the files would go to his lawyer, an ex-FBI colleague, and the Seattle field office. Next, he needed more intel. Who was Viper? What was the full scope of their plan? Mark hesitated, his cursor hovering over a program he hadn't touched since leaving the bureau. It was a custom tool built by a hacker-turned-informant, designed to bypass basic email encryption. Using it on Emily's account crossed a line, but she'd crossed one first. He plugged in her email address, pulled from a joint account they used for bills, and let the program run. Within minutes, it cracked her password. Her inbox loaded, a Pandora's box of secrets. Most emails were mundane, work memos, client pitches, but a folder labeled personal caught his eye. Inside were messages from an anonymous account signed V. The latest, sent 3 days ago, read, "Funds transferred. Proceed with the audit setup. Sullivan's out by Friday." Attached was a bank statement showing a $500,000 transfer to an offshore account in Emily's name. Mark's jaw clenched. The audit setup had to be the fraud frame-up cooked books to make it look like he'd embezzled from his own firm. Another email mentioned collateral with a cryptic line, "If he digs, we move on the sister." Mark's blood ran cold. Lisa, his younger sister, worked as his firm's CFO. Was she a target too? He needed help. Mark dialed Sarah Nguyen, his old FBI partner, now a cybercrime specialist in Seattle. They'd saved each other's lives more than once, and if anyone could trace Viper's money, it was her. The phone rang twice before she picked up, her voice groggy but sharp. "Mark? It's 2 a.m. You okay?" "I need a favor," he said, keeping his tone even. "Off the books. Can you trace an offshore transfer? And check a name, Viper." Sarah paused, the silence heavy. "You're not back in the game, are you?" "It's personal," he said. "Someone's trying to burn me. And maybe Lisa." "Send me the details," she said, all business now. "I'll dig quietly." "But Mark, stay clean. You're not an agent anymore." He thanked her and hung up, knowing clean might be impossible. Next, he turned to Emily's and Ryan's phones. Confronting them now would tip his hand, but he could watch their moves. Using a discreet app from his bureau days, he planted trackers on their devices, syncing their locations and messages to his laptop. A ping showed Emily's phone upstairs, Ryan's across town, likely at his loft. No calls or texts between them since the footage. They were careful, but not careful enough. Mark leaned back, his mind mapping the battlefield. The fraud plot was clear: pin fake charges on him, tank his firm, and cash out. Viper was the puppet master, but why? A disgruntled client? A rival? The mention of Lisa suggested personal stakes, not just business. Mark's firm was worth millions, but his reputation was priceless. A fraud conviction would ruin him, leaving Emily and Ryan to walk away rich. The thought of Lisa caught in the crossfire fueled his resolve. He wouldn't let them touch her. He glanced at the clock, for 17 a.m. The penthouse was silent, Emily still asleep, oblivious to the storm brewing. Mark's plan took shape. He'd lure Emily and Ryan to a controlled setting, a staged meeting where he could confront them with the footage and force answers. But first, he needed Viper's identity. Sarah's trace would take hours, maybe days, but the trackers would give him real-time data. If Viper was watching, Mark would find him. And if Sarah was compromised, a possibility he hated to consider, he'd have to outsmart her too. A notification chimed, a new email in Emily's personal folder. Mark opened it, his pulse spiking. It was from V, timestamped 3:45 a.m. Sullivan's early return complicates things. Accelerate the audit. If he pushes back, we escalate. Escalate. The word hung like a guillotine. Mark's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He could reply, impersonate Emily, and bait Viper, but that risked exposure. Instead, he forwarded the email to Sarah, adding, "Urgent. Check for Seattle ties." Dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sound in hues of gray and gold. Mark stood, stretching his stiff shoulders. He caught his reflection in the window, hollow eyes, clenched jaw. The man staring back wasn't the negotiator who charmed CEOs or the husband who danced with Emily under the stars. He was a hunter, cornered but not caged. Emily and Ryan had started this game, thinking they'd outplayed him. Viper had raised the stakes, threatening Lisa. But Mark had one advantage: they didn't know he was awake. He whispered to the empty room, "You wanted a fight? You've got one." In 23 hours, he'd expose their lies or die trying. The waterfront cabin set nestled among towering pines, its weathered cedar walls glowing faintly under the moonlit mist rolling off Puget Sound. Mark Sullivan had chosen this place deliberately, a remote client retreat he'd used for high-stakes negotiations, far from Seattle's prying eyes. Tonight, it was a trap. His laptop, propped on the cabin's oak dining table, streamed live data from the trackers on Emily's and Ryan's phones. Both were en route, their dots converging on the cabin's coordinates. Mark's pulse was steady, but his jaw was tight. In 21 hours, he'd unravel their betrayal or lose everything. He'd lured them here with a lie, an urgent meeting with a fictional tech mogul, a deal too big to discuss over the phone. Emily had bought it instantly, her reply chipper, "On my way." Ryan, more cautious, had called to confirm, his voice betraying a hint of nerves. Mark had played the part, confident, distracted, clueless. Now, as he adjusted the hidden camera he'd rigged in the cabin's living room, he felt the old negotiator's calm settle over him. Emily and Ryan thought they were steps ahead, plotting with Viper to frame him for fraud. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Mark glanced at the anniversary photo he'd brought from the penthouse, now tucked in his jacket pocket. Emily's smile, once his anchor, felt like a blade. He pushed the memory of their rooftop dance aside, focusing on the plan. The bedroom footage, Emily and Ryan scheming to ruin his firm and mentioning Viper, was queued up on a tablet. Sarah, his ex-FBI ally, was tracing Viper's offshore funds, but her last text, vague and delayed, gnawed at him. Was she compromised? And Lisa, his sister, Viper's potential collateral, was she safe? Mark had texted her to stay at a friend's, claiming a work emergency. He couldn't risk her becoming a pawn. Headlights pierced the cabin's windows as Emily's Audi crunched up the gravel drive. Moments later, Ryan's Tesla followed. Mark straightened, slipping the tablet into a drawer. Showtime. He opened the door, forcing a smile. Glad you made it. Client's running late, but we can prep. Emily stepped inside, her blonde hair swept into a sleek ponytail, her navy coat damp from the mist. She hugged him, her perfume sharp and familiar. This better be worth the drive, Mark, she teased, but her eyes flicked around the room, wary. Ryan followed, his usual swagger muted, his handshake too firm. Big deal, huh? He said, scanning Mark's face. Mark nodded, gesturing to the leather sofa. Huge. Sit. I've got something to show you. They settled, exchanging glances Mark didn't miss. He poured 3 glasses of water, stalling to let their unease build. The cabin's rustic charm, log walls, a stone fireplace clashed with the tension thickening the air. Mark sat across from them, his voice casual. Before we dive in, I found something odd at the penthouse. Thought you'd want to see. He pulled the tablet from the drawer, tapped play, and slid it across the table. The screen flickered to life, their bedroom, Emily laughing as Ryan kissed her neck, their voices clear. He still doesn't know? Ryan asked. Mark? He's too busy saving the world, Emily replied, smirking. Viper's handling it. We frame him for the fraud, tank the company, walk away clean. The footage froze on Emily's face, her eyes cold. The cabin went silent, the only sound the distant lapping of the sound. Emily's glass slipped, water splashing her lap. Mark, this isn't, she stammered, her face draining of color. Ryan lunged for the tablet, but Mark snatched it back, his gaze iron. Don't, he said, voice low. Explain. Now. It's not what you think. Emily cried, her hands trembling. He pressured me, Mark. Ryan said we'd lose everything if we didn't. Liar. Ryan snapped, his face reddening. You wanted the money, Em. You said Mark was holding you back. Their voices overlapped, accusations flying, but Mark barely heard them. His focus shattered as his phone buzzed, a security alert from the cabin's perimeter camera. A figure, hooded and silent, moved through the pines, a radio glinting in their hand. A whispered voice crackled through the app's audio feed. Targets in the house. Finish it now. Mark's heart slammed against his ribs. Viper's operative here already. He locked eyes with Emily and Ryan, their panic confirming they hadn't expected this. Quiet, he hissed, dimming the tablet. He grabbed them, shoving them toward the study, a small room with a reinforced door. Inside. Move. Emily resisted, clawing at his arm. Mark, what's happening? He pushed her in, Ryan stumbling behind, and locked the door. Their shouts muffled as he turned to the living room, mind racing. The cabin's intercom system, installed for client retreats, was his edge. Mark darted to the control panel, flipping it on. Whoever you are, he said, voice steady, you're on camera. Leave now, or the FBI gets this feed. A lie, but a good one. The figure froze, visible on his phone's security app, then retreated a step. Mark pressed the advantage, channeling every negotiation trick he knew. I know about Viper. I know the plan. Walk away and you might still have a life. The operative hesitated, radio raised. You're bluffing, came a gravelly reply, but doubt laced the words. Mark's phone pinged again, Sarah's text, funds traced to Victor Crane. Yacht in Puget Sound. Be careful. Victor Crane. Emily's ex-boss, a corporate fixer Mark had exposed for laundering years ago. Viper. It clicked, but the operative was still outside, and Sarah's text felt off, too curt, too late. Was she playing him? Mark typed a quick reply to Sarah, cabin compromised. Send backup. He didn't know if he could trust her, but he needed time. The operative circled closer, a shadow against the pines. Mark's eyes flicked to the study door, Emily's and Ryan's muffled arguing seeping through. They were pawns, but Viper was the kingpin and Lisa was still at risk. He had to outsmart this now, or the game was over. He whispered to himself, 21 hours left. Hold the line. The cabin creaked, the operative's boots crunching closer. Mark gripped the intercom, ready to talk, or fight, for his life. The air in the waterfront cabin was thick with tension, the faint hum of the intercom the only sound breaking the silence. Mark Sullivan stood by the control panel, his eyes locked on his phone's security feed. The hooded operative prowled just beyond the pines, a shadow under the Puget Sound's misty moonlight. The radio crackle from moments ago, targets in the house. Finish it now still echoed in Mark's mind, a grim reminder of Viper's reach. Emily and Ryan, locked in the study, had fallen silent, their muffled arguments replaced by fear. Mark's plan to confront them had spiraled into a deadly game, and with 20 hours left, he was running out of time to protect himself and his sister, Lisa. Mark's fingers hovered over the intercom button, his negotiator's instincts sharp. He'd bluffed the operative into hesitating, claiming the FBI had the feed, but the lie wouldn't hold forever. His phone buzzed with Sarah's text, funds traced to Victor Crane. Yacht in Puget Sound. Be careful. Victor Crane, Emily's former boss, a corporate fixer Mark had exposed for money laundering 5 years ago, was Viper. The pieces fit: Crane's vendetta, the fraud plot to ruin Mark's firm, the threat to Lisa as collateral. But Sarah's message, curt and oddly timed, deepened his unease. Was she compromised? Mark couldn't shake the memory of an unknown number texting her phone, caught in the operative's data. Trust was a luxury he no longer had. He spoke into the intercom, voice calm but commanding. You're working for Victor Crane. He's using you to settle an old score. Tell me where he is and you walk away. The operative paused, visible on the feed, their radio glinting. A low chuckle crackled through. You think you're smart, Sullivan? Crane said you'd try to talk your way out. Doesn't matter. You're done. Mark's jaw tightened. He adjusted the cabin's exterior lights via his phone, flooding the pines with a harsh glare. The operative flinched, retreating into shadow. Crane's not here to save you, Mark pressed. Give me his location or you're the one who's done. He was stalling, buying time to think. The study door rattled, Emily or Ryan testing the lock. Mark ignored it. His focus was the operative, Crane, and the ticking clock. The radio crackled again. He's on his yacht, Nightshade, docked at Shills Hole Marina. That's all you get? The operative turned, vanishing into the trees. Mark exhaled, his mind racing. Shills Hole was 30 minutes away. Crane was close, too close. But why reveal the location? A trap? Mark checked the security feed. The operative was gone, no backup in sight. He texted Sarah, operative confirmed Crane at Shills Hole Marina, yacht Nightshade. Need FBI now? Her reply was instant, on it. Stay put. Too fast, too clean. Mark's gut screamed, something was wrong. He unlocked the study door, yanking it open. Emily and Ryan sat huddled, faces pale. Who's Viper? Mark demanded, tablet in hand, the footage still frozen on Emily's smirk. Emily's eyes darted to Ryan, then back. We don't know his name. He contacted us through encrypted emails, promised millions to set you up. Ryan nodded, voice shaky. He said it was business, not personal. We didn't know he'd send someone here. Business? Mark snapped. You sold me out. You put Lisa in danger. Emily flinched, tears welling. I didn't know about Lisa, I swear. It was just the company, the money. Mark cut her off, his voice ice. Victor Crane. Your old boss. That's Viper. Why's he after me? Emily's mouth opened, then closed. Ryan looked confused. Crane, he muttered. She never said it. Shut up, Ryan. Emily hissed. Mark caught the slip. Emily knew more than she'd let on. Before he could press, his phone chirped, a new alert from the tracker on Emily's phone. A message sent minutes ago to an unknown number. He knows. Get out. Sent from inside the cabin. Emily had a burner phone. Mark's blood ran cold. She was still playing him. He grabbed her purse, ignoring her protests, and found the burner tucked in a hidden pocket. The message glared up at him. Who's this to? He growled, shoving the phone in her face. Emily shrank back. I don't know. Crane's people. They told me to report if you got close. Ryan stared at her, betrayed. You were still talking to them? After this? Mark's mind spun. Emily wasn't just a pawn, she was Crane's insider, feeding him every move. A distant siren wailed, growing closer. Sarah's FBI backup or Crane's trap? Mark pocketed the burner and turned to the tablet, pulling up the operative's phone data, hacked earlier via a backdoor app. A call log showed a number tied to Shills Hole Marina, timestamped an hour ago. Another entry caught his eye, a text to Sarah's phone from the same unknown number, sent yesterday, keep Sullivan in the dark. Mark's stomach dropped. Sarah, his last ally, might be working with Crane. Or was she being played too? Headlights swept the cabin windows, FBI vans, their lights flashing. Mark had seconds to decide. He locked Emily and Ryan back in the study, their pleas ignored, and slipped the tablet into his jacket. The burner phone, the call log, Sarah's text, they were his leverage. Crane was on the Nightshade and Lisa was still at risk. If Sarah was compromised, he'd face Crane alone. If she wasn't, he'd need her now more than ever. An agent knocked, voice sharp. Sullivan. It's Nguyen. Open up. Mark hesitated, hand on the door. Sarah's face appeared in the window, her expression unreadable. Friend or foe? He didn't know. But Crane was the endgame and Mark was done hiding. He opened the door, his voice low. We've got a yacht to catch. Crane's waiting. Mark stepped into the night, the sirens fading into the roar of his own pulse. 20 hours left and the truth was slipping through his fingers. The nightshade rocked gently in Shill's Hole Marina, its sleek hull glinting under a stormy Puget Sound sky. Lightning cracked, illuminating the yacht's deck where Mark Sullivan stood, rain soaking his jacket. Victor Crane, Viper, leaned against the railing, a whiskey glass in hand, his silver hair slicked back, his smirk unshaken. 20 hours ago, Mark had uncovered Emily's betrayal with Ryan, their plot to frame him for fraud, and Crane's vendetta driving it all. Now, with Lisa's safety and his own life on the line, Mark faced the man who'd orchestrated his ruin. The FBI, led by Sarah, was en route, or so she claimed. But her cryptic texts and a mysterious message tied to her phone left Mark doubting her loyalty. This was his last stand and he'd end it on his terms. Mark's hand rested on the hidden recorder in his pocket, its red light blinking. He'd slipped past the yacht's lone guard, a distracted mercenary using a maintenance hatch to board undetected. Crane hadn't noticed him until now, his eyes narrowing as Mark stepped into the storm's glow. Sullivan, Crane drawled, unfazed. Persistent, aren't you? I told Emily you'd be trouble. His voice was smooth, venomous, the same tone Mark remembered from 5 years ago when he'd exposed Crane's laundering scheme, costing him millions and his reputation. You're done, Crane, Mark said, voice steady despite the rain stinging his face. I know everything, your emails, the offshore accounts, the fraud setup, even the threat to my sister. Lisa's name fueled his resolve. She was safe, hidden at a friend's, but Crane's plan to use her as collateral still burned. Mark held up Emily's burner phone, its incriminating messages glowing. This ends tonight. Crane laughed, sipping his whiskey. You think you're the hero, Mark? Everyone betrays you, Emily, Ryan, even your precious Sarah. She's been feeding me your moves. Mark's heart skipped, but he didn't flinch. Sarah's last text, FBI inbound, hold tight, had felt off and the unknown number texting her phone screamed setup. Was Crane bluffing or was Sarah truly compromised? Mark pushed the doubt aside. He needed Crane's confession, not distractions. Keep talking, Mark said, stepping closer, the recorder catching every word. Why me? Why now? Lightning flashed, thunder rumbling as Crane's smirk faded. You ruined me, he spat. That FBI stunt cost me everything, my clients, my name. You thought you could walk away clean? I rebuilt, Sullivan, and I swore I'd bury you. The fraud was just the start. Your firm, your sister, your life, I'd take it all. Mark's fingers tightened on the recorder. Crane's ego was his weakness and Mark knew how to exploit it. You needed Emily and Ryan, he said, voice low. Pawn's too weak to see you'd burn them too. Crane shrugged, tossing his glass overboard. They wanted money. I gave them purpose. Emily was easy, bitter, ambitious. Ryan was just greedy. But you, he pointed, eyes gleaming. You're the prize. The deck shuddered as waves crashed against the yacht. Mark pressed, and Lisa? Hurting her was your backup plan. Crane's smile returned, cruel. Insurance. If you got too close, she'd pay. Still might. Mark's blood boiled, but he stayed calm, his negotiator's mask intact. You're not touching her, he said. The FBI has your emails, your operative's testimony. You're finished. Crane's laugh was cut short by a distant wail, sirens closing fast. His eyes darted to the marina where red and blue lights flickered through the rain. Mark's gamble on Sarah was paying off or it was a trap. You're bluffing, Crane snarled, but his voice cracked. Mark seized the moment, leaning in. Confess, Victor. Tell me how you planned it and maybe you'll see a courtroom instead of a grave. Crane's composure slipped, his hands trembling. Fine, he hissed. I rigged the audit, funneled the money, hired the operative. Emily planted the camera, Ryan cooked the books. I wanted you broken, Sullivan, publicly, permanently. The recorder caught it all, Mark's heart pounding with grim satisfaction. Lightning struck again, and Crane lunged, grabbing for the burner phone. Mark sidestepped, letting Crane stumble into the railing. Footsteps thundered below, FBI agents, led by Sarah, storming the deck. Crane. Hands up. Sarah shouted, her gun trained. Her eyes met Mark's, steady, no trace of betrayal. The text to her phone, Mark realized, was Crane's ploy to sow doubt, not her disloyalty. Agents swarmed, cuffing Crane as he cursed, his empire crumbling. Sarah nodded to Mark. Got your message. We've got Emily and Ryan in custody. Lisa's safe. Mark exhaled, rain masking the relief flooding him. The recorder, still running, held Crane's downfall. Emily and Ryan would face charges, conspiracy, fraud, their lives unraveling under Seattle's spotlight. Mark stepped back, the storm's fury mirroring his own. He'd lost his marriage, his best friend, his trust. But he'd kept his soul. Days later, Mark stood in his emptied penthouse, the skyline no longer his. He'd sold it, cutting ties with the past. The footage, emails, and Crane's confession had cleared his name, but the scars remained. He thought of Emily's laugh, Ryan's handshake, moments now tainted. Yet Lisa's grateful hug, Sarah's loyalty, grounded him. He'd launched a nonprofit to help fraud victims, channeling his pain into purpose. As he locked the door, he whispered, "Betrayal breaks you, but truth rebuilds." Crane's game was over. Mark's new chapter had just begun.